Grant, why are people complaining about March Madness being dumb this year? Because there's no upsets. I want to see the best play the best.
Okay, I do too. Don't get me wrong, but madness is literally in the name. I want some excitement. And it's cool if we get to the final and the best team is playing the second best team. That's what it always should be in the end. But I want those moments, the unexpectedness. I want that in the buildup. I want Florida Gulf Coast to beat Georgetown. I want FAU, who had never won a game before, to be in the Final Four, 1 point away from the championship. That's what makes March Madness so great.
Honestly, McNeese could have beat Purdue if Ora wasn't bouncing around in a freaking jumpsuit all weekend, acting like he was all that. That could have been an upset.
So I saw somebody put this out there, and I actually really agree with it, which is that the same way that companies got smart and they put less money into TV advertising and they started putting it into influencer marketing, I saw someone say that having your manager or equipment guy, whatever, just a team member, not a player, but someone on the team, having them be an influencer on social media could be the next generation of NIL deals. You know, Aura got a bunch of them, but also how you market your school. Like we saw when the show NCIS went on TV, applications to work in that field skyrocketed. You know, we see it when teams go on deep runs in March Madness, when teams go on runs in the college football playoff, their applications to their school go way up. So I would guess McNeese is probably going to get a lot more applicants this time around than they do in a normal year.
They're all going to NC State now.
Yeah, well, yeah. So that's what I was going to say, because Aura is transferring with the coach, which it's crazy. This guy making six figures in NIL just for having the nickname Aura and being on TikTok, and he's transferring with his head coach. When would we ever talk about that before? When would this even be a story?
Well, it's social media. It's kind of dumb. Like, I'm a big Aura fan. Don't get me wrong. I like what they were doing. Once I saw that Under Armour gave him a custom jumpsuit for that second game, it blew my mind, because I knew they were going to get beat, because Purdue wanted to smack them. Like, you could tell Purdue was out for blood. And it wasn't just because they were trying to advance that tournament. They wanted to smack the little guys, and they did a good job of it. McNeese didn't stand a chance in that game. But as far as just the madness, all these favorites winning, I don't mind it. It's what's going to happen in the NIL era. If something happens unexpected, like we get an upset in the future, it's just going to mean more to us. But everyone's saying March Madness is ruined because of it. It's not ruined. I want to see Duke play Florida for the national championship. I want to see Florida play against Auburn in the national semifinal, or Michigan State. I think Michigan State's trash, but I want to see those matchups. I don't need to see McNeese jump all the way to the Elite Eight, because they're not going to win. We know that. So what's the point?
Well, so again, I want to push back on this just a little bit, because look around the country right now. Vladislav Golden's in the Sweet 16 with Michigan. Elijah Martin's in the Sweet 16 with Florida. John L. Davis is in the Sweet 16 with Arkansas. They were all on the Florida Atlantic team that went to the Final Four. And again, they lost 72-71 to San Diego State. They were one basket away from playing UConn in the championship game. And FAU had never won a game in its school history. Now, they are a bit of an outlier, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about outliers. We're talking about VCU's Final Four team. We're talking about George Mason's Final Four team. This is March Madness isn't going to be ruined if this goes away, but it's going to become a playoff like you get in the NFL, the NBA, the NHL. It's going to be a traditional playoff system versus this total unpredictable, volatile creature. You never knew what was going to happen in March Madness. The best team was probably going to win it all, but up until that point, you had no idea. So all that's happening now is it just becomes the top 8, top 6 seeds, they're all going to advance, and then the top 4 seeds are all going to advance, and then the top 2 seeds are all going to advance, and so on.
I mean, I wouldn't say that necessarily. Colorado State almost knocks off Maryland. That was an unbelievable shot that Derek Queen made.
It was a travel too.
It was a travel, but it was still an unbelievable shot. Shot. But I'm on the side of it was a travel. I mean, he ran like a running back. And then you go to Florida and UConn. UConn almost knocks off Florida. That game took Florida playing bad for UConn to almost win it. It wasn't just UConn playing well or UConn being physical or a March Madness team. Florida had to play bad to be in that position. But still, we almost had that upset. There were a few. Ole Miss found a way to win. Like, there were teams that won games that weren't supposed to win necessarily or kept it close. It was still entertaining the whole time. So I don't get the notion of March Madness being ruined. I think when we're focusing on aura, like when aura is the biggest story of the weekend for the Cinderella teams, I think we've already lost the plot there personally.
Well, so the reason that I think the Cinderella teams are dying, and you mentioned it at the top, is NIL. And NIL is great. Anytime you provide a service, you deserve to be compensated. March Madness and just college sports in general create billions and billions of dollars. So yes, these players absolutely deserve to be paid. I'm not saying NIL should go away. What I am saying is it's almost impossible now for top level, mid and low major teams to find these players, much less retain them. That's the biggest thing. Player retention is at an all-time low. That's how you get a team like Vanderbilt, who is the joke of the SEC from an athletic standpoint. They went 9-24 last year. They bring in a new coach, and their top 9 scorers are all from the portal. They just dug into their NIL fund. They said, we're going to go buy these guys. We're going to buy the top mid-major players, put them in mid to low level power conference institutions, and that's how we're going to move forward. So if Vanderbilt, which was, I believe was a 10 seed, if they're the team to pull an upset, Arkansas, 10 seed, if they pull an upset, like, yeah, it's a 10 versus 7. And if they win in the second round, it's a 10 versus 2. But the name Arkansas, the name Vanderbilt is very different from a North Texas or a Drake or something like that.
The NCAA should be ashamed of themselves, honestly. When you open the portal up, I know this is a different subject. You open the portal up on Monday after the first and second round, and 500 players are in it, and these coaches are trying to worry about winning championships, but you also got to worry about players. That's stupid too. We also need, I like free transfer. I do. I think you can only have so much free transfer, though. I don't think a kid should be able to go from one place to the next place to the next place, because half these kids, not half, 99% of these kids do not go to the NBA. So we got to also get them a degree too in the process. It's just, I don't understand why we don't have contracts at this point. I don't understand why there's a salary cap. We need to treat it like a business, because it is a business. They're not amateur athletes anymore. And they were really never amateur athletes. They were still making a ton of money. They just weren't being compensated for it. But NIL has not ruined the college basketball and college sports landscape. I think it's only going to enhance it, because the better teams are going to be better. We might not get the upsets, but we're still going to get great competition at the top. However, there needs to be a whole fix in how the system works. There should be a salary cap for the SEC, the ACC, the mid-majors need a salary cap. And if you're not willing to put the money forward to pay your players for NIL, you shouldn't have a program.
So, not to pick on this guy, but just to go to what you said about free transfer, Joe Bamisil, senior guard for VCU, 5th-year guard, starts his career at Virginia Tech, transfers to George Washington, transfers to Oklahoma, transfers to VCU. Hey, 4 schools in 4 years. You can transfer your credits, you can roll everything over, sure, but I don't want to see that. And my opinion at the end of the day, I guess, doesn't matter. This kid's on his journey, whether he's trying to be a professional basketball player, whether he's just going to an environment that he feels comfortable in. Maybe he was looking and he didn't find home. Whatever it is, I just don't want to see that. I don't want to see 4 schools in 4 years. I'm sorry. That's another reason that it's so, if you're not connected to the team you're rooting for in college basketball, which normally means you went to school there or you grew up right next door, if you don't have that connection to a team, it's so hard to become a fan of a particular school, because players are leaving for the professional leagues. They're transferring all the time. And like I said earlier, player retention is just the lowest that it's ever been.
But what does that show you too as an athlete? It doesn't show you how to overcome adversity. It's just when things get hard, we're going to hit the portal. And you might be able to get more money here or there, but I think contracts, salary cap, and that's ultimately coming. We're still early in the NIL era, but going back to just March Madness being ruined because of NIL, there were people saying that, which is kind of a wild take. It's not ruined. You're still going to watch it. It's still going to be a heavily viewed sporting event, heavily bet on sporting event. We may have not gotten the upset, and like you were saying with FAU, that was a rarity. Dusty May's a hell of a coach. We saw that at Michigan this weekend. Like, that was an upset. He can win games, and he knows how to advance in this tournament, and he did it obviously at FAU. But they are a rarity in the scheme of it. I would rather see the top dogs compete, because I think it's going to lead to better games. I don't know if Florida is going to make the national championship. If they do, I don't know if they're going to beat Duke. That's more exciting to me than FAU making a run and playing Duke for a national title, and then we know what's going to happen.
I mean, I would agree about Florida or FAU playing Duke. That would probably be a slaughter, but it's a lot more entertaining watching them get to the Final Four versus, oh, we've got Duke and Florida and Houston and I don't know, Auburn. There's just not much excitement there. The quality of championship game will be better, but I want something in the run up to that. What I'm keeping an eye on, speaking of NIL, and I guess kind of closing this out, what I'm keeping an eye on, I want to know what's going to happen with the ex-EuroLeague pros becoming college freshmen. There's the kid in Illinois or at Illinois whose name I can't pronounce. I believe Zugic from Creighton, like legit EuroLeague players. One of them, I forget which one. One of them have been playing in the EuroLeague since they were 15 years old, and now they're college freshmen. And it makes sense for them because they can come make significantly more money here with NIL. I mean, up to like $1 million probably coming in as a first-year player, first time stepping foot into America. I want to know if that's going to be the route that mid-low majors try to take as their players are being stolen from them by the blue blood programs.
Land of opportunity, Grant. That's what America is. Land of opportunity. Come here, play college basketball, maybe go to class, maybe not. You're gonna be just fine. So yeah, it's not ruined though at all. It's not. I'm seeing some wild things being Stephen A. Smith. This is the death of college basketball. Somebody like quote tweeted, it's like, how many college basketball games does Stephen A. Smith actually watch this year? So we'll see.
Well, so I gotta stick up for Stephen A. because I shit on Stephen A. a lot. So I got to stick up for him. He said, if this continues where we don't have upsets anymore, that will be the death of college basketball. And I kind of get that because, again, March Madness, everyone loves March Madness because of upsets. If there are no upsets happening, then it changes what we're watching.
I think you can view it, though, especially being in the betting industry, from a different standpoint than just the TV industry. Like, as far as basketball, college basketball, nobody watches college basketball until football ends. If you do, you are a hardcore college basketball fan. I don't think there's a ton of those out there. And there very well could be. Not as many as football fans. I turn on college basketball once football ends completely. I get into it for the month before March Madness. I watch March Madness. I get excited. It's great. It's not going to deter me from that. It's the only game in town. I'm not going to turn on the women's March Madness over the men's March Madness. Not going to happen. And we talk about the women's March Madness too. There's never an upset in that. Never.
So yeah, it's all chalk over there.
It's all chalk over there. I mean, a 3 versus a 1 is a massive difference. So it's just like, I truly don't believe March Madness is going to be ruined. There may not be as many upsets, but when we turn on the ESPN ticker and you see a close game between this mid-major and a really good school, you're going to get a little more excited about it. You're going to appreciate it a little more in the future, and we're still going to get great games at the top.
We did have some great games in the round of 32, although a lot of games that kind of were, they were decided. Like some team would go up 10-15, and then that it just wouldn't change until the end.
Yeah, we had a few of those. One team I want to talk about first off the jump, because I posted a TikTok and maybe my wording wasn't great in it, but I said Michigan State's the worst 2 seed ever. And I think people took that a little literally, yeah, like worst 2 seed ever. Like, and I was like, well, no, the St. John's obviously it's worse. They're like, no, you mean ever. Like, you mean the history of the tournament. I'm like, calm the frick down, boys. So Michigan State, though, I bet them to go to the Final Four. I think they're a really bad 2 seed. I think St. John's is a really bad 2 seed. Watching St. John's actually play in that game, it looked like there were kids that shouldn't have been on a Division I basketball floor. It was horrendous. And then I look at Michigan State and I see a little bit better version of St. John's, and everyone's counter to that was, well, they have a bench and they have defense and they grind you out. If you start like you did against Bryant and New Mexico, you will get beat immediately this weekend. So you can't start slow, no matter, and when you're a team that has a good defense and you have a good bench, you need to start fast, because that only works grinding a team out late in a game if you can play with them from a score perspective.
Well, so I don't disagree with anything you said. I think Michigan State has the easiest opponent. I think Ole Miss is the worst team left. And I know Ole Miss is a lower seed than Arkansas, but with what Arkansas has shown so far, and also the fact they got Boogie Flan back from injury, I think Ole Miss, maybe Purdue, those are probably the 2 worst teams left there. It was a little concerning seeing the way Michigan struggled with Bryant in that first half. And to be fair, sometimes this happens. The top seeds just don't really show any respect to the 15 to 16 seed. It's a 2-point game at halftime. They end up winning by 20. That is what happened to Bryant. New Mexico kind of got hosed in that game. I'll be the one to say it. Both these teams are defensive, physical. New Mexico's front court is 6'9", 6'9", 6'10". It was a physical game. Michigan State gets called for 11 fouls. New Mexico gets called for 22. I thought it was totally unfairly officiated, and not to make this a broader subject, but I think the refs in this tournament have just been atrocious. It really, not only do I gain an appreciation for NBA level offenses, watching these kids run around like chickens with their heads cut off, I gained such an appreciation for NBA refs, which I never thought that I would say. But it's like college refs miss so many calls. The ones they do call are ticky-tack, and probably could have swallowed their whistles there. And there's no consistency. Like, the first half will happen, they won't call anything, and the second half starts and they come out and they're calling literally everything. They're ejecting players. Like, I don't know if you saw the BYU Wisconsin game. A player was just he got trapped in the corner. He was maneuvering his body around. He tried to get between two guys. His shoulder kind of went into somebody's groin region, which is incidental contact. He was trying to split him, but the players are staying close together, and they ejected him for it.
Well, the amount of the flagrants that we get for like incidental elbows and stuff, it's wild to me. We review everything when it comes to that in college basketball, but I think this college basketball tournament in general, it's defined by sloppy play. Like, whether it's Michigan State, whether it's Florida, like Florida and Walter Clayton, everyone's praising Walter Clayton at the end of the game for making the threes. He's the one who put them into that situation with his behind the back passes leading to turnovers. It's just, even Florida, who is one of the favorites to win national title, who knows if they're going to get there or not, they are so sloppy. And they, like, all these fast-paced, fast-break offenses only work when shots are falling. When shots aren't falling, they look extremely ugly.
Well, that's what made UConn so incredible these last 2 years was they, team, I forget the exact number. I think it might have been 13 points. I think they beat every single team by at least 13 points in those 2 straight March Madnesses. And most of them were 20-point wins. Their execution was just top notch. And it looked about average for an NBA game because, like, players know what to do. They're where they're supposed to be. The ball gets moved around, efficient offense. College teams, college kids can't do that. Sometimes that's a matter of the coach can't implement it. The coach isn't smart enough to implement it, or the players aren't smart enough to retain it. They don't understand how to adapt on the fly. Whatever the case may be, UConn was running legit NBA offense. And it's not that they had incredible talent. Yes, Stephon Castle was a lottery pick. Yes, Donovan Cleveland was a lottery pick, but these aren't guys that are going over and changing franchises when they get there. They're not Cooper Flaggs. They're not Brandon Millers, whoever you want to point to. It's just guys who came together and worked as a cohesive unit, and nobody's brain ever shut off. When you watch these kids on any other team in the country right now, there's always a player on a team who's not where he's supposed to be, not doing what he's supposed to be, and it shows up.
Well, speaking of UConn too, we'll talk about the Florida game, but we can lead into that one by saying, did you see that the UConn athletic department is potentially getting sued now?
So I saw the post. I didn't say anything about it because I want to read some real reporting on it to know if that is true, but I have seen the case. And why don't you explain it for our audience if they haven't?
So everyone saw the video when Hurley's walking off the floor saying, I hope they don't F you like they F'd us, Baylor. Stuff like that.
Talking about the refs.
Talking about the refs. Yep. And as they're walking off the floor, a reporter's filming this. And then somebody from the UConn athletic department, I think it's director of basketball comms for UConn, says to him, like, don't post that, delete that video right now, blah, 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 which I don't know why. It's not a terrible video. It's just Dan Hurley. That's who he is. I don't think that's anything to make a fuss with a reporter over. It's not a great look, obviously. So the reporter's like, I'm not going to delete it. And then the UConn director of basketball comms threatens him and says, like, we will end you if you post that.
He says, I'll ruin your life.
I'll ruin your life. Something like that. Yeah. And I guess in what state were they playing in? They were in
just give me 10 seconds. I'll tell you.
Whatever state they were playing in, it's like big time, whatever.
They were in Raleigh. North
Okay,
Carolina.
North Carolina. When you threaten somebody in North Carolina, that's a big problem. That's like a offense. So I guess the NCAA is looking into it now and saying they're going to take scholarships away from UConn, or they're going to do a postseason ban. I don't believe in that. I believe in maybe a scholarship or two, which really doesn't matter, because if a kid doesn't have a scholarship, you give him more NIL money. So I don't know what the punishment's going to be, but the threat doesn't necessarily look good. But this was reported by like verified people. I saw it last night. When I saw it after the game, I didn't believe it as much. And I saw a couple of verified sources doing it last night.
Okay. Yeah, I also saw that Hurley's been fined. He's going to have to write an apology note to the refs. I saw someone else, I forget who, someone else already had to do that. So I believed that. I believe the apology letter and the fine. Anything else would be pretty serious. I can't really think of a precedent for this where a school or the NCAA has sued a school because a coach said something like that. So I don't know. I want to say like a postseason ban would be extreme for me, especially considering these are the defending back-to-back national champs. And, you know, you can talk about Florida didn't play well. UConn's 2 points away from beating them. And potentially, if they beat Florida, that could easily catalyze them on a run to the Final Four. And if they're in the Final Four, maybe they win 3 straight. Who knows?
Yeah. So speaking of Florida, Grant, I got mixed emotions on this game. I do have a ticket on Florida to win the national championship. I don't think it's cooked. I really don't. I think Duke is the best team, but we also haven't seen Duke face much adversity throughout their season and in this tournament. I am a believer, and it's good to face adversity in the tournament. If you go into a game and you're in a dogfight and you find a way to pull through like Florida did, that was an unbelievable win because they had nothing throughout that game. They were turning the ball over. They were playing bad. Obviously, Walter Clayton came alive late, but how they won that game, that's going to bring your team together a little more. And I hope this week Florida comes out with their head on fire against Maryland and says we need to play better. So I think there is a benefit in that. The game, as bad as it was, Florida played very poorly in that one. They did something that they really hadn't done much this season except against Tennessee. I don't think that one defines Florida because their odds significantly lengthened after that game. They're now like plus 430. Depends on the book. DraftKings has them a little lower than FanDuel, but FanDuel has them like plus 430 right now. And you got Duke at plus 220. So I don't think the disparity between those teams is that big just off one game.
So I took Florida minus 9.5 against UConn. Thought they were going to make an example out of them. Was wrong there. I would still be, whatever the spread is, believe 6.5. I'd be laying that against Maryland. Maryland has the best, might have the best starting 5 in the country. Surely they're in the conversation. They have literally no bench depth. They got 2 points off the bench in the round of 32. They had 2 points off the bench in the round of 64, aside from one player, forget his name. He had 11, but this guy basically never plays. And it was a blowout. They were beating Grand Canyon by 40 points. So they put in other guys, and one of them lit it up. Point being, the starting 5 has to do everything. Maryland shouldn't be in this round, and I'm devastated that they are because I picked in my bracket and I bet Colorado State to win that game. Thankfully, I also had Colorado State spreads, still came out with a profit, but it was a travel. Colorado State deserved to win that game. And my biggest concern with Maryland was that because they're so reliant on their starting 5, if one of their guys doesn't have it going, you don't have someone off the bench to come, carry the boat, hold the rope for you. And second, as you go on a deep tournament run, that it's just more miles, more wear and tear on these bodies, that if you face a team that has greater depth and they're allowed to take some of the burden off their stars, and their stars have more energy in the later rounds, that's significantly going to favor whoever Maryland is playing. The good news for them is they do get however many days off between Sunday and Thursday, but I would still be taking Florida. Despite them playing poorly, I don't think they lost a lot of their intangibles. They were crashing the glass. They showed up late in the game. They're moving the ball around. Granted, a lot of them led to turnovers against UConn, but they were still running their normal offensive sets. They had some really intense defense in the second half. I think Florida wins pretty comfortably.
My thing is, we just don't need the daggers. Like early in the game when they were controlling it, you got Walter Clayton coming up, pulling up for 3. And that's his style. That's his game. And it helped them late in the game when he was just making those shots. But I wish college teams sometimes would set up their offense a little bit. When you're up 6, when you're up 8 early in the game, and in a possession, makes it a 10-point game, you don't need the back-breaking 3. Like, set your offense up and just stack on points. And that's something Florida was not doing early when they were controlling it early, which did not last for long. But it would be like, okay, we get a 6-point lead. Then let's pull up for three. Let's do a behind the head pass to a dude in the corner for a three when he's covered. Like, it was just dumb stuff. And that's the things they can't afford to do moving forward. I don't think they'll have a problem with Maryland. I really don't think they'll have a huge issue with Texas Tech. But I would see Florida going to the Final Four here pretty easily.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So if we did get Florida versus Duke, Grant, or assuming your national championship matchup, but let's just go the favorite for the national championship matchup right now. Florida, an SEC team that's been tested all season, or Duke, who plays in the ACC, probably the best overall team in the tournament, definitely has the best player. Who would you take in that one right now if you're visualizing that game happening?
If you told me that game was happening tomorrow, and first of all, I have a controversial take on Duke that we got to get to with the rest of our Sweet 16 picks. But if we got Duke versus Florida tomorrow, I would take Duke. I don't really care about being battle tested. It matters to a certain extent, but their talent, they got 3 lottery picks and the top pick in the draft on their team. They are elite at shooting. They're elite on offense, elite on defense, elite at rebounding. There aren't holes to point at with this team.
All right, so I got to hedge my ticket then, Grant. That's what it comes down to.
I'm still on Houston at +5, or I took them at +750. They're down to +550. So we'll see how that hangs out.
So you like Houston better than Duke then?
So let's just go talk about Duke. So Duke's playing Arizona. When I filled out my bracket, I picked Arizona to win that game. I did get this matchup. I had Duke versus Arizona. I took Arizona. I thought Cooper Flagg wasn't going to be fully healthy. And I thought that first couple of rounds, whether he plays, whether he doesn't play, they're not going to need him. I said they would win both games without him. When they get to the Sweet 16, I thought, okay, this is where you're going to need him. He's not going to be 100%. I think he's close to 100%. I'm sure there's still a something there, whether it's 98, 99, but he's not 70%. He's not 80%. So I am scared for my pick. Don't get me wrong. The reason that I took Arizona was they've had this sort of newfound physicality, which I think they kind of unlocked in the Big 12 tournament. Even though they lost to Houston, they were up at halftime. They played them super physical. And look at their first couple of games. They dominate Akron, and then they get a good win over Oregon. Oregon beat Liberty by 30 points in the first round. It's a former Pac-12 showdown. Oregon took a huge lead early on. It was like 17-2 or something. And Arizona comes back to win that game. And there's also the Joker card of Caleb Love, who just scored close to 30 points. And Caleb Love is 4-3 against Duke, knows them intimately from his time in North Carolina, beat them in the national semifinal that year that UNC lost to Kansas in the national championship game. So all those things together, I was like, this is a letdown spot for Duke. Duke's favored by 8.5 points. They absolutely should be favored. I'm going to take Arizona out of stubbornness for my bracket. But if you play this game 100 times, Duke is no doubt winning more times than Arizona wins.
So you think Arizona can knock them off, though?
I think it's a possibility. I'm probably not going to bet them on the money line, even though I did pick them in my bracket. But I think it's possible. I don't know.
I think Caleb Love, after they won that game, and they were saying, you get Duke this week, he was like salivating.
Yeah, well, that's the thing too. Yeah, he looked like he was very careful not to say what he wanted to say.
Yeah, no, he was ready to go. This is going to be a fun one. But why? What's his hate for Duke? Like, you leave North Carolina, like, why do you still hate Duke?
I mean, if you go to UNC for 3 years, I think it's pretty natural to, dislike Duke, especially if you do beat Duke in the national semifinal to get to the national championship. Some of that just never leaves you.
So assuming his reason for leaving was NIL money?
I believe it was, yeah.
There you go. Not loyal to your school. I think, do you think Carolina fans, they hate Duke, so they got to root for him and they want Duke to get knocked out? But I don't know. You leave your school. I don't think you got much room to talk.
I hear you. That's just the NIL era.
It's the NIL era. Like, I don't think these kids can, by the end of their time, I don't think they can identify with the school. He played at Arizona. He played at, North Carolina, but you left North Carolina when you had him in the promised land just to go get more money. It's hard to say like, well, he's a Carolina guy.
No, I hear you. Another controversial pick, and I'm not sure what you're going to think of this, but Also, my bracket, I had BYU in the Final Four. Same region as Duke. Again, I thought Cooper Flag wasn't going to be healthy. Arizona was going to beat Duke, and then I had BYU beating Arizona. I'll be honest, I don't think BYU is going to get to the Final Four anymore, but I think they will beat Alabama. I am confident, actually. I'm pretty confident they will beat Alabama. These teams, they can play similar styles. We know what Alabama wants to do: play at the fastest pace in the country, drive and kick, get up and down the court, shoot a ton of threes. BYU can do that. They can play at pace. They can shoot threes. They shoot like 37, 38% as a team. Richie Saunders has been great. Igor Demon is a projected lottery pick. They can do all that stuff. They can also slow down and play in the half court. And they're a lot better when it comes to staying engaged on defense. I have to give a tip of the hat to Alabama because they out-rebounded St. Mary's in the last round, and St. Mary's was the #1 rebounding team in the country. So if Alabama shows up with that same level of focus and commitment, then it could get scary for BYU. But I'm going to take the upset there. I think BYU wins outright.
I think Alabama wins that game pretty easily. I think Duke's got a really tough time to get to the Final Four. Best team, but tough road. Beating an Arizona team, beating an Alabama team, or BYU, but I'm assuming it's going to be Bama because, Grant, it just means more in the South. It means more in the Southeastern Conference. All right. So
I don't know if we're there yet with basketball, especially Nate Oates and Bama. They haven't proven it much, really.
No, but the Mormons, I mean, they haven't proven a ton either.
Whoa. If we're going to say it means more in the South, the Mormons just gave out the biggest NIL contract ever to AJ Dibansa. It's like $8 million next year.
Well, but that's next year. I'm talking this year. And this year it means more in the South. And Alabama, they can go, and BYU can score too. But when Alabama goes nuclear from the 3-point line, they could beat Duke. That's the one team I think that gives them problems because they can just make shots. I'm not saying they're going to make a ton of them in this game, but I do think Alabama finds a way to win this one. I consider potentially taking BYU against the spread, but I think the safer pick is just taking Alabama to win the game.
I wish I knew what BYU's Final Four odds were pre-tournament, because if they make it, I'm going to be so mad I didn't take it. They're plus 850 right now. They were slight favorites over VCU and underdogs against Wisconsin. So I'm guessing they were probably like what, plus 1,500, plus 2,000?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, they're a 6 seed, so right off the bat, I mean, they didn't have a super difficult road. A lot of people picked VCU over them, which I think was crazy. Because VCU couldn't score. Wisconsin, that was a tight game, but BYU controlled it. And then you go to this game against Alabama. It's going to be a tough game. Duke's got a tough run. I think out of the 1 seeds, like looking at their path to the Final Four, if I had to rank them in order of difficulty, I would say I think Duke. I'm going to put Duke at #1. I'm going to put Houston #2. I'm going to put Auburn 3 and Florida 4.
I would put Houston #1 just because I think they've faced the toughest opponent, which is Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is the hardest game out of any of those.
No, but I mean right now, like their next.
Oh, right games. Now. Then yeah. I agree. Yeah.
So Duke's got a tough road. Houston, I think Kentucky or Tennessee, not Kentucky necessarily, but I think if Tennessee wins that game, they can be a little bit of a threat for Houston. I still think Houston gets there. Florida really shouldn't have any issues. And then, I don't know, Auburn, though, with this Michigan game, this is going to be a tough one. I kind of like Dusty May to potentially pull off an upset in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't hate that. Auburn established themselves eventually against Creighton, but it took a while. Creighton was a team that I was spotting as an upset pick. Granted, they didn't even cover, but it was a close game. 12-point difference isn't quite fair to what Creighton was actually doing, especially in that first half. Michigan has been impressive. You know, they won the Big Ten championship, and a lot of times the Big Ten winner falls apart in March Madness. Has not happened for them so far. They've done a great job using their size. Got to remember Vladislav Golden was on that FAU Final Four team. Like you said, Dusty May has experience, so I think you're right. I think it could be a tough game, and I just don't trust this Auburn team. You know, I don't trust Bruce Pearl. I don't trust some of these guys that they have out there.
No, I don't either, because Bruce Pearl hasn't been able to get it done, and I don't. It's not that I trust Michigan, but I did take Michigan. It was more of a get my money back kind of bet. Like things just hadn't been going well for me, so I took Michigan on the money line and found a way to pull through and chip away a little bit. But Michigan, just their ability to come back in the final 10 minutes of that game was really impressive. And their big men with Danny Wolf and Vladislav Golden are tremendous. I mean, they are physical. They can play the post. They can shoot. They're really fun to watch. And I think that's going to give Auburn a little bit of trouble in this game. Auburn definitely is the better team, but Janai Broome, I don't know. I just haven't. I like when I watched Janai Broome play against Alabama in Tuscaloosa, I was blown away. I'm like, this is the best player in the country. He's unbelievable. And I just haven't seen that big game impact as much down the stretch from him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I would definitely. I don't know if I'm ready to go money line, but Michigan plus 8.5 looks pretty good.
It does look pretty damn good because they're not going to give up. They're going to play hard, and that's the biggest thing I see with Dusty May. Michigan State, Grant, you think they're advancing in that?
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is the worst team left in this bracket. Michigan State was my Final Four pick before the tournament started, and I am sticking with it. They can make free throws. They can't shoot threes, but they can make free throws. That matters in close games.
Their free throws were trash. Trash.
Yeah, but they're still, I think, like 78% as a team or so.
How many times did they had multiple Florida had multiple like 0 for 2s with the line. I think Michigan State definitely had 1 or 2 in that game. Like my heart rate jumps when you say free throws at Michigan State because watching them play against New Mexico, I'm like, hit some damn free throws. I want to see what their percentage was.
The first Ride the Line episode we ever recorded was called College Kids Can't Shoot Free Throws.
They can't. And you know what? Overall, I will say, like the past few games have been rough, but I haven't necessarily noticed the missed free throws as much. Like if you miss the first one, typically you're making that second one. The 0 for 2s were killer for Florida. I think I saw a few in Michigan State, but other than that, I haven't seen a lot of like no points at the line attempts so far.
Well, I mean, I think part of that is they would probably be more memorable if we had some big upsets. You can go back and look at those free throws as why.
19 of 28 from the free throw line for Michigan State. New Mexico was 5 of 10. I think Florida was. I gotta look at Florida's percentage. This was bad. You can't win like that. Like 19 of 28, you're giving up 5-6 points right there, which is unacceptable. Florida 77 to 75, and they were 64% from the free throw line, 22 of 34. So just going off that alone, if you make your free throws, you don't give UConn a few possessions that you wish you had back off turnovers, you're winning that game by a lot more.
What other games we got on here for the Sweet 16?
I'm surprised you got Michigan State going to the Final Four, Grant. Like I do too, but I don't believe in it at all.
You're surprised I have it, but you have it too.
No, I'm surprised you still believe in it.
Well, I think Michigan's going to beat Auburn. Auburn's the 1 seed, and then you just got to beat Michigan to get there.
Izzo and Myron's Izzo in March. Izzo hasn't been a second. This is Izzo's first second weekend in like a decade. Let's relax.
Wait, so who's gonna make it to the? You have Michigan beating Auburn, so you're gonna tell me Michigan's gonna beat Michigan State?
Maybe. I trust Dusty May a lot more right now.
Michigan State.
Did you see the look in Tom Izzo's face?
Annihilated Michigan when they played recently.
Right. Michigan State annihilated everybody in the second half of their season, and I don't know how they did it.
They were up 50 to 28 at halftime.
This team won the Big Ten, not the tournament, the regular season. They are not good. I thought the Big Ten was the class of college basketball. And
no, okay. Whoever told you that was wrong.
No, the Big Ten had a good start. Big Ten's number 2 for sure. It's SEC Big Ten.
Well, yeah, but the drop off is somewhat substantial.
But still, okay. So the second best conference in America, this is the class of it, and they were terrible from the free throw line. They almost lost New Mexico. The Michigan State fans are coming at me saying, "Oh, well, you know, we're good, blah blah blah. Like you suck. You don't know ball." That's the biggest comment. You don't know ball. And I saw one. It's like, why do all white dudes have a sports podcast when they know nothing about ball? I saw that one. That was a good comment. But bottom line is, guys, you beat New Mexico and you beat Bryant. Let's stop like jumping up and down for beating those teams and covering a number. Ridiculous.
Let's see. We're talking about Michigan State.
Auburn comes from that region.
The only we still have a few games at the bottom. Houston versus Purdue. We got Houston, right? Nothing to talk about there.
That region's not that exciting. Kentucky really shouldn't be here right now, I don't think. I mean, I think they've played better than they are. Tennessee probably beats Kentucky. Kentucky probably beats Tennessee. Either way, I still have Houston go to the Final Four.
Did I tell you about my fun fact about Kentucky being a 3 seed?
No.
So I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he was like, "It's kind of crazy that Kentucky is a 3 seed." And I said, "It actually is." So I went back and I looked it up, and I looked for the worst 3 seed ever. Kentucky, just for reference, 22-11 this year, and they were the 3 seed. The worst record by a 3 seed before this year in the history of March Madness was 2017 Florida State. They were 25-8. 25-8. This Kentucky team is 22-11. So they had 3 more losses, 3 fewer wins than the worst 3 seed ever. It just doesn't compute with me, especially when you consider that Louisville was dropped to an 8 seed. Gonzaga was an 8 seed. How did Kentucky end up as a 3?
It just means more in the South, Grant.
I mean, I guess the SEC was the best conference. I want to put it out there. Do I believe it's a coincidence that the SEC has this huge media rights deal with ESPN and they were the ones who got in, and the North Carolina director is the guy who's in charge of the committee and North Carolina makes it? I think all that stuff is related somewhat. I don't think it was the end all be all, but I think it plays a role.
The seeding was horrendous in this tournament. I know, Michigan State won the Big Ten. Like, I don't think they're 2 seed worthy. Michigan State.
Oh, sorry. You mean the regular season. Sorry.
Regular season, yeah. Michigan State, I don't think Michigan State's a 2 seed. St. John's sure as hell wasn't a 2 seed. I just look at Alabama and Michigan State so much different. And they're 2 different styles. I look at like Kentucky as a 3 seed, and I look at them compared to even Arizona as a 4 seed, and I look at Arizona so much better than Kentucky. Like, there's these teams that I don't necessarily agree with. Gonzaga being an 8 seed. I just don't know how the seeding necessarily was done, and then also how they stacked up these regions. It makes no sense. Also, though, that's the case across the board. Like, we look at the college football playoff for this year for football. That was totally messed up too. But it's easier.
That was a rule. That was because of the rules for the seeding.
And the rule was dumb. So I don't know who came up with that. But even too, like, putting SMU in over Alabama. I know Alabama's bowl game showing doesn't defend them, but I don't think SMU is one of the top 12 teams in the country. So there's different things that we could debate on this show, right? Like, it's easier though. I'm going to give the bracket makers a little bit of leeway here. It's easier for us to look at it after the fact and say this didn't make sense than before it.
I agree with that. I also don't know that I've met anybody who hates SMU as much as you do. You bring them up on every show.
SMU walked into Happy Valley thinking they were going to compete, and as bad as Penn State is, they smack them.
I mean, SMU's not used to playing in 12 degrees, whatever.
No excuse. That's what happens when you come to the north.
Last game, Texas Tech versus Arkansas. Who you got?
I kind of like Arkansas. I think Arkansas plus 5.5. It wouldn't surprise me if Calipari wins. So I'll go Coach Cal.
Arkansas. I'm with you. I'm taking Arkansas outright. I am. Then, Texas Tech before this year, just during the regular season, they were 0-4 against ranked teams. And so far they've beaten UNC, Wilmington, and Drake. And
they're going to get Adu Thiero back, I think, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so he should be back at some point. That's going to help them. I'll take them. Regular season, when Florida played Arkansas, Florida won 71-63, and they only played them once. I would suspect that if Florida wins this weekend against Maryland, they will smack Arkansas and advance to the Final Four.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Or Texas Tech. It really doesn't matter. The Gators are going to be chomping this weekend.
With the way, my bracket was Houston. My bracket was Houston, BYU, Michigan State, Florida. With the way things are going right now, I would go Houston, Duke, Michigan State, Florida.
Houston, Duke, Michigan State, Florida. I like Houston. I like Florida. Yeah, I don't know why you're so high on Michigan State. Am I wrong to say that Michigan State's a trash 2 seed?
Well, again, even if they are, they have to beat one of Auburn or Michigan and Ole Miss. That's the easiest route of any of these teams, I think.
Ole Miss is playing well though right now. Like that's also, we talk about not having the Cinderellas. Like they're playing really good basketball.
They are. I don't want to disrespect them, but I still got Sparty.
All right, Mississippi is, let's see here, in the Ken Palm, they're 21st in Ken Palm. Michigan State 7th, and Michigan State also misses free throws. So you don't know. We'll see.
Michigan State's a 3.5-point favorite as well.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot, no. The biggest line, I believe, is that Auburn game. Auburn and Duke are both -8.5.
I love Michigan plus 8.5. I like Arizona, but like that could go south very quickly. I recognize how good Duke is, but I love Michigan plus 8.5.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I think I'll be taking that.
All right, Grant. Well, that was another great episode of Ride the Line. We're riding this morning.
We are riding. I fixed the sunlight problem that I was having.
There you go.
As I showed you in pre-production, all that happened. I would love to turn the camera, and I have these new blackout curtains. I just hung up 2 suit jackets on my curtain rod, and it is blocking the sun perfectly.
There you go. Oh, Grant, one more question for you before we leave here. Who is winning the women's national championship?
UConn.
What up, Huskies? They'll beat South Carolina. No problem. Anyways, that was Ride the Line. Grant's curtains are fixed. UConn's win the women's national champion. Sorry to Juju Watkins last night. Little ACL.
Oh, injury. Yeah. Good. Glad you said that. Prayers for Juju. Hope she gets better soon.
Prayers for Juju. With that being said, UConn is going to run through that region now. Like they're not even. I with Juju, I think UConn was going to smack them, but without her, they will absolutely obliterate USC and they will be in the Final Four. So I bet UConn's odds. I don't have them here, but I bet they drop significantly after that injury.
Let me see if I can grab them. National champion UConn is +170. Get Scar +190.
Okay, so before it was Scar was plus, like I think Scar was +170. Scar was like +190. I think, and UConn was like +220 leading into the tournament.
Sounds right.
Anyways, guys, that was Ride the Line, greatest podcast in sports betting entertainment. We will see you next time, Friday, for another episode.